What would you do if your husband gambled away your child's surgery money? Every last dollar? Would you walk away or walk straight into the same casino that destroyed your life? This is the story of Sarah Miller, a quiet school janitor who did the unthinkable. When her husband lost $100,000 trying to win for the family, she chose not revenge, but a plan so daring it would shock even the casino king himself. What happened next wasn't luck. It was courage, justice, and a mother's love, disguised as power. Before watching, tell us in the comments, if someone you love made a mistake this big, would you forgive them or fight back? The Las Vegas skyline glittered in the distance. A mirage of gold and neon, whispering promises that always ended in ruin. Miles away, in a small, time-worn apartment at the city's edge, silence pressed against the walls. The hum of traffic and faint laughter from a nearby bar were the only signs of life outside. Jack Miller, 52, a truck driver with sun-worn skin and calloused hands, sat hunched at the kitchen table beneath a flickering light bulb. His denim jacket was soaked with sweat, his breath unsteady. In his trembling hand lay a crumpled casino receipt, a piece of paper that felt heavier than sin itself. Across the table, Sarah Miller, 48, her once dark hair streaked with gray and tied neatly behind her head, stood motionless. Once a financial consultant, she now worked as a school janitor, her hands marked by bleach, her heart by exhaustion. The quiet around her was not calm, but controlled, like the silence before a storm. Jack's voice cracked. "Sarah, I thought it was just a small game. They said I could double it back, I swear. I only wanted to help Tyler, but it's gone, all of it. The surgery money, everything." Sarah's tone was cold and deliberate. "You thought you were saving him, but what you really sold was his future." Jack buried his face in his hands. "I'll fix it, I swear. I'll work nights, sell the truck, whatever it takes. Just please, talk to me." She didn't answer. Her eyes drifted toward the small window, where the city lights flickered faintly in the dark, beautiful, distant, and cruel. Once, she too had believed in numbers, in luck, in redemption. That belief had cost her everything, her career, her peace, and now, the man sitting before her. From the next room came a soft laugh, Tyler's voice, fragile and innocent. The sound pierced the air like a prayer. For a brief second, Sarah's gaze softened. Then it hardened again. She took her coat from the rack and stood up. Jack's voice trembled. "Sarah, where are you going?" She paused at the door, her silhouette framed by the faint glow from the city outside. "To clean up the mess you made." And with that, she stepped into the night, leaving the door ajar as the cool desert wind swept in. Jack stared through the window, watching the distant lights of Las Vegas shimmer, dazzling, indifferent, merciless. They blurred through his tears until they looked like flames. And in that hollow, flickering silence, one question echoed in his mind. What could a school janitor possibly do against a casino king? Morning broke over Las Vegas with a soft haze, the sun struggling to pierce through the lingering neon glow from the night before. The city never truly slept. It merely shifted its mask from night to day. Inside a downtown cafe, Sarah Miller sat alone by the window, her reflection blurred against the glass. She hadn't slept. The bitterness of the night before still lingered on her lips. The sound of Jack's broken voice, the weight of her own silence. But beneath that calm, something had awoken. An old part of her that had once thrived on precision, risk, and control. By 10 a.m., she stood before the golden entrance of the Bellagio Hotel, transformed. Gone was the weary janitor in a plain gray uniform. In her place stood Mrs. Rivera, an elegant widow of fortune. Her hair, once tied back, now flowed in soft dark curls over a fitted navy dress. A thin diamond bracelet caught the light, and her steady gaze, framed by subtle makeup, carried the confidence of a woman who knew exactly how people lied. Every step echoed against the marble floor, and with each one, she built her armor. She had once walked these halls in her former life, not as a guest, but as an advisor for men who believed luck could replace logic. That world had swallowed her once, but not this time. The receptionist's polite smile couldn't hide her curiosity as Sarah's forged invitation passed inspection. Moments later, she was led through a hidden corridor behind the casino floor, into the private suite of Rick Donovan, the same man whose deceit had cost Jack everything. Rick Donovan, in his early 60s, exuded the air of a man who had traded morality for money long ago. His gray hair was slicked back, his suit immaculate, his smile practiced. He looked up from his whiskey glass and said with mock courtesy, Well, Mrs. Rivera, I assume? I hear you've come to test your luck. Here, fortune's expensive, but worth every penny." Sarah tilted her head slightly, her voice calm yet razor sharp. "I'm not here to buy luck, Mr. Donovan. I'm here to buy justice." Rick chuckled, misreading her composure for arrogance. He gestured toward the velvet chair across the table. "Then please, have a seat. Let's see how justice plays the cards tonight." Sarah sat, her eyes fixed on the deck between them. The hum of machines faded, the world narrowed to the flick of a dealer's wrist. Her fingers brushed the edge of the table, steady and cold. "This isn't about luck anymore," she thought. "This time, I'm the one dealing the game." And with that, the first card turned. The air inside the private suite was thick with smoke and tension. The low hum of jazz music barely masked the shuffling of cards and the faint clink of whiskey glasses. Sarah Miller, now completely in character as Mrs. Rivera, sat under the dim chandelier light that turned her diamond bracelet into a quiet flash of authority. Her heartbeat was steady, though her palms felt the weight of the past pressing against her skin. Across the table, Rick Donovan leaned back in his leather chair, his silver cufflinks gleaming as he lifted his drink. "Begin," he said, his voice smooth as oil. The dealer, a young man with a thin scar on his cheek and eyes that darted nervously toward Rick, began to deal. Sarah's expression was calm, almost bored. She let her first few hands fall to ruin, losing gracefully, even smiling faintly when Rick or the others laughed. "You think I'm naive?" she thought. "Good. Keep thinking that." She needed them to underestimate her, to invite her deeper into their game. As the night stretched on, her eyes caught subtle movements. Rick's fingers tapping twice on the table, the dealer's sleeve brushing the deck too often, the faint reflection of invisible ink under the ultraviolet glow of the chandelier. "UV marking," her mind whispered. A trick she had seen during her years advising wealthy gamblers who believed intellect could beat deceit. Her pulse quickened, but not from fear. The pieces were falling into place. The next few rounds shifted. Her cards began to turn in her favor, her bets rising with quiet confidence. The laughter around the table thinned. She played with precision, her movements deliberate, her tone unshaken. Rick's smirk faltered slightly when she took her third consecutive win. "You're either the luckiest woman in Nevada," he muttered, "or something else entirely." Sarah looked up, her eyes glinting with both sadness and resolve. "If I win," she said softly, "I'll take back what you stole from a good man." Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from memory. In her mind, She saw Jack's face under the harsh kitchen light, broken and ashamed. Rick raised an eyebrow, amused yet wary. "And who might that man be, Mrs. Rivera?" Sarah only smiled faintly. "Someone you've already forgotten." Then she turned her gaze to the cards, her fingers steady as steel. The next deal began. The real game had just started. The night had deepened, and the air inside Rick Donovan's private suite was heavy with tension and whiskey. Cigarette smoke curled like ghosts around the chandelier, dimming the golden light over the poker table. Sarah Miller, still poised in her disguise as Mrs. Rivera, sat motionless, her glass of champagne glinting untouched before her. Across the table, Rick's smirk had returned, confident, predatory. The room buzzed with whispers. Every eye was on the two of them. Sarah's heartbeat was steady. She had seen this kind of arrogance before. Men drunk not on liquor, but on power. She let her hand tremble just slightly, feigning intoxication. "I suppose," she said with a faint, tipsy laugh. "We should make this official, shouldn't we? A signature for fairness." Rick leaned forward, amused. "A contract?" He laughed, teeth flashing. "You're a strange woman, Mrs. Rivera." He motioned for a pen and a sheet of paper. "Fine, let's call it a gentleman's wager." Sarah smiled, eyes downcast as if playing along with a joke. Inside, she felt the sharp precision of her old self, the strategist, the observer, the woman who once audited men like him for a living. When Rick's signature met the page, she glanced at the ink, bold and clean. One signature, she thought, one thread in the web. Rick didn't notice the small recording device concealed within the delicate pendant around her neck. The faint red light blinked once, silent and unseen. "See?" Rick drawled, raising his glass. "The thing about luck, Mrs. Rivera, is that it always favors the clever. I've made a fortune off fools who think they can win in my house." Sarah leaned in slightly, her tone calm but cold. "You're right, Rick. Fools always lose." She paused, letting her words linger like perfume in the smoky air. "Unless they learn how to observe." A flicker of confusion crossed Rick's face. He brushed it off with a laugh and slammed his chips forward. "All in," he declared, the room erupting in murmurs. But Sarah didn't flinch. Her expression was serene, almost distant, as she placed her cards face down, still unturned. She folded her hands, eyes fixed on Rick's. Let him think he's already won, she thought, because victory always comes to those who wait. The dealer hesitated, sensing something deeper than a game in the air. Then, with trembling hands, he dealt the final card. The room was silent except for the rhythmic clicking of the ceiling fan. Sweat gleamed on Rick Donovan's temple as he stared at the cards in his hand. A perfect royal flush, hearts gleaming like trophies under the light. Around him, the crowd leaned in, whispers rippling through the smoke-filled air. He couldn't lose. Not this time. Not to a woman who smiled too calmly. Across the table, Sarah Miller sat like a marble statue, her face unreadable, her diamond bracelet catching the faint light with each quiet movement. When the dealer nodded, Rick slammed his hand onto the table, cards spreading like a magician's final act. "Royal flush," he announced, voice dripping with triumph. "Luck's got her favorite again." Gasps followed. All eyes turned to Sarah. She didn't flinch. Instead, she placed her hand on the table and began to turn over her cards one by one. 2, 3, 5. A low murmur rolled through the crowd like distant thunder. The dealer's jaw dropped. Even Rick blinked, unsure if he was seeing right. "No," he muttered. "That hand It's impossible. Sarah met his gaze, her voice soft but steady. Impossible doesn't mean it's not true. The silence was electric. Her hand reached for her necklace, unfastening the silver chain that had hung unnoticed all night. She placed it gently on the table, pressed a small button, and from within the pendant, Rick's voice echoed back through the room. I've made a fortune off fools who think they can win in my house. Rick's face went pale. The crowd turned into a storm of whispers and gasps. Sarah rose slowly, calm as ever. This game stopped being about cards a long time ago, she said. Now it's evidence. Before Rick could move, the door burst open. The crash of boots and shouted commands filled the suite. FBI agent Collins, tall and sharp-eyed, led a team of officers into the room. Rick Donovan, you're under arrest for fraud, illegal gambling, and organized racketeering. Rick froze, eyes wild. Who are you? He shouted at Sarah as agents cuffed his men. Sarah turned, her expression unreadable, but her words were ice. The woman you thought you could fool. And as the agents pulled him away, the sound of the recording still played softly. The final hand dealt by justice itself. The rain had been falling since dawn, washing Las Vegas clean of its neon sins. By late afternoon, the city looked almost gentle, almost. Inside the cold corridors of St. Mary's Hospital, Jack Miller paced like a man possessed. His eyes were bloodshot, his shirt damp with sweat, his hands trembling as he clutched a crumpled payment notice. The surgery for his son, Tyler, was due in less than an hour, and the hospital accountant had already warned him. No payment, no operation. He had begged every friend, called every contact, pawned his wedding ring, even sold his truck, all in vain. The world seemed to collapse in on him, one regret at a time. Each ring of the phone made his heart jolt, but the other end was always silent. Sarah's number, unanswered. Again and again. His mind spiraled. What if she's gone? What if she couldn't bear it anymore? The thought stabbed deeper than any debt. Jack leaned against the hospital wall, tears mixing with the smell of antiseptic and despair. Nurses passed him with sympathetic glances, but no one could help. He whispered to himself, hoarse and broken. Sarah, I didn't mean to lose us. I just wanted to save him. His voice cracked. Please, come back. And then, a noise. The door to the payment office burst open. The room fell silent. There she was, Sarah Miller, standing in the doorway, her hair soaked, her coat dripping rainwater onto the sterile tiles. In her trembling hand, she held a folded check. Her face was pale but steady, her eyes unreadable. Without a word, she handed the check to the stunned accountant. It's paid, she said softly. Schedule the surgery. Jack froze. His lips quivered, his eyes darting between her and the paper. How? How did you? Sarah didn't answer. She simply looked at him, exhaustion etched in every line of her face. Then, in a voice calm and final, she said, Tyler needs his father, Jack. But he doesn't need a father imprisoned by guilt. The words pierced him deeper than any anger could. Jack collapsed into her arms, sobbing, tears of shame, love, and release all at once. I'll never gamble again, he whispered. Never. Not even for fun. Outside, the rain eased. A faint beam of sunlight broke through the clouds, spilling gently across the hospital floor, fragile, warm, and new. The morning sun crept slowly over the horizon, brushing the city of Las Vegas with a pale gold light. For once, the streets were quiet, as if the city itself was taking a deep breath after the storm. Inside St. Mary's Hospital, the faint scent of disinfectant mixed with something warmer, gentler. Hope. Through the glass window of the recovery ward, snowflakes drifted lazily, melting the moment they touched the pane. Jack Miller sat beside his son's bed, his rough hands carefully holding Tyler's small fingers. The boy was still weak, his chest rising softly under the thin hospital blanket, but the color had returned to his cheeks. Life, fragile, stubborn, and miraculous, had chosen to stay. Sarah stood near the window, her reflection merging with the falling snow. Her eyes were tired, but they held peace, a kind of peace she hadn't known in years. The war inside her, between anger and forgiveness, had finally quieted. Jack rose from the chair, his voice low and unsteady. "I thought gambling could fix everything," he said, breaking the long silence. His eyes glistened with tears he no longer tried to hide. "But it almost destroyed us." Sarah turned toward him, the corners of her lips curling into a small, knowing smile. She took his hand gently, her fingers cold but steady. "The smartest win," she whispered, his knowing when to stop. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the rhythmic beeping of the monitor, steady and calm, like a heartbeat syncing with the dawn. Then, as if guided by the same thought, they both leaned closer to their son, holding him between them. Tyler stirred, opening his eyes just enough to see their faces. He smiled faintly, whispering, "Mom, Dad," before drifting back to sleep. The camera of fate seemed to pull back, the three of them framed in a pool of soft light, fragile yet whole. Outside, the last flakes of snow fell gently onto the quiet city. And far in the distance, as the morning brightened, the bright red casino sign that once beckoned to Jack flickered once, twice, and went dark. A silent end to a foolish chapter. There are no lucky cards in life, only moments of grace that arrive when we choose truth over temptation, love over pride, and faith over fear. Sarah's story reminds us that sometimes miracles are not thunderous or grand. They happen quietly, in forgiveness, in courage, in the choice to stop before we lose ourselves. Perhaps that's how God works, not through fortune or chance, but through hearts that learn to listen. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs a little light today. Leave a comment with your thoughts and subscribe to help us spread kindness, faith, and second chances to more people around the world. May God bless you, and may your miracles find their way to you.